Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessinoTweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me know if you guys can hear me and see me okay. Last couple days been struggling a little bit with the quality. So if it's bad, just let me know and I'll fix it. Anyways, there's about 70 of you guys already in here. That's amazing. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't been here before. Welcome to another daily download where we'll be going through the most current Arsenal news and transfer news, which is amazing. I do have some updates and I'll give my thoughts on those updates. Just to be clear, like I'm not a journalist or like a transfer expert. I'm like getting the stuff and then like giving my take on it just in case, like, you know what I mean? Because like sometimes people are like, well, you're not a journalist, so how do you know? It's like I never claimed to be. So like, yeah. But we're going to be going through the most recent Arsenal news, and I want you guys to be in the chat box letting me know what you think about this kind of stuff. The show is nothing without you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see who's in the chat. I think I see some names I haven't seen before. Zach 10 Football says, I need to know who went for good for Laka. We will talk about Lacazette. Mackie says, Laka disgraced the number 9 shirt. If we're being real, one of the worst, if not the worst signing Arsenal has ever made. Mustafi is up there as well. FTL Gunnar Craig says, hey, Jess, greetings from South Florida. Love the show. Thank you so much. Matt G says, I really hope it works out for Laka back in France. He hasn't been amazing for us, but he always gave his all. Blaze says, hi, Jess. Hey, Blaze, how are you? So yeah, let's get in it. Let's get into it. So Lacazette is gone, guys. Lacazette is gone. And so I think this is interesting considering, that midway through the season, I have to be honest, I was kind of on the fence about whether or not we should give Lacazette a new deal, like some sort of like year-long deal or something like that. I was kind of on the fence about it. And then he fell off of the cliff. And then I saw the light and I was like, no, we definitely have to get rid of this guy. I've never been like a huge Lacazette fan. So, I thought the signing was a big signing at the time when we brought him in, because we brought him in for like almost 50 million or something like that. But very early on in his like Arsenal career, you could kind of see that this wasn't what we expected it to be. And when you let go of somebody like Alexis, and then this is the person that is supposed to be like bearing that burden, it was just strange the way that things kind of worked out. You have Alexis on the way out, you have Lacazette on the way in, and then 6 months later you have Aubameyang in. And so you never really replace the winger. You just have now 2 strikers on huge wages, and that need to kind of be the central figure. And so we never really found a good way of working Lacazette in together with Aubameyang. There's only like a couple of instances that I can think of where they played well together, and it's been pretty much like a downward kind of decline from Lacazette. Now he was the player of the season like in 2020? He was player of the season, or maybe it was 2019. But he never really got beyond that. And so he was never really the goal scorer that I think that he was supposed to be. So yeah, Lacazette just was never my favorite signing, but like it is what it is. And I think the best possible thing that could happen is that he moves on. And so the news kind of came out today that he'll be going back home to Lyon, which is where we got him from. So, I think that's good for him. I wasn't quite sure if they would take him on because of his wages, but I'm sure that there's been maybe he came down on his wages. He's going to be a free signing, so they'll have to give him the signing bonus, but maybe they were able to like maneuver some things around. But this is probably what's best for him. I wanted to ask you guys, and there's a community poll going on now around Lacazette, and how would you rate Lacazette's time at Arsenal? The options are good, meh, and flop. 60% of you guys have said meh. Like that's pretty much the big, like that's the big chunk of the opinion. So, and I tend to agree. Like I'm not sure that it's like a total flop. Like for me, like Pepe is a total flop. Lacazette, there's been some good times, some bad times, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, and he always worked really hard. And I think there was probably always a way that we could have made it better, but we just couldn't figure that out. And he came in such a bad time at Arsenal, like the in-between period of like Arsene leaving to where we're at with Mikel Arteta. There's been a lot of strange decisions in terms of recruitment, and so I just think it's like, it's a good thing that we didn't give him a new deal. At some point we did want to, which is kind of like scary, it's like, damn, like the club is always open to giving somebody a new contract. Like if you play decent, you can get a new contract off of the back of it. And I just feel like we need to be more ruthless. Lacazette should have been gone a long time ago. You guys know I banged on for months about the offer that Roma put forward, and like people always say like, well, how do you know that that's true? It was just hearsay. It came from David Ornstein. It came from David Ornstein. So, unless you're going to tell me that David Ornstein is so unreliable, he said from his own Twitter feed, that Roma put in a 15 million, pound offer for Lacazette a couple of seasons ago. And we decided not to take it on because we wanted to retain his value. Nah, like even with Xhaka, I feel like that's going to be the exact same thing where the next time that we get an offer for him, it'll be a lot less or he'll leave for free, because you can't retain the value of players that people don't think are actually that good. And I think with Lacazette, the fact that there was so little interest in him, especially with the wages that he was on, it would have just been so much smarter to just move him on. And then in last summer, we would have been able to bring in a striker, and we couldn't do that because Lacazette was still here. So hopefully they've learned their lesson on that. But like, damn, like I'm so happy that he's moving on, and because it's been like a weight, and I hate to say that, but it feels like he's been kind of a weight on the club because of how much wages he's on and how the opposite of prolific he is. He just doesn't score goals. And it's funny because I was looking at I think it was like Gabriel's best moments and Ben White's best moments and Odegaard's best moments from last season. And there were a lot of moments where like Odegaard or somebody would play him in, and there were a lot of missed chances, a lot of shots that a good striker would have put away. And so I don't know if his confidence was at an all-time low, but I just kept thinking, if you get anybody decent in that position, those become, instead of having 4 goals on the season, you have 10, 11, 12 goals on the season, and we're in Champions League. So, happy that he's moving on. But, there were some good times. There were some bad times. I think ultimately you could put this down to recruitment, not so much onto Lacazette, but also that injury that he suffered, that ankle injury, like he just never recovered from it physically. So there's a lot of different things in there, but I would say that his time at Arsenal has been meh. So there you go. Arcusman says, Lacazette at his best was extremely important to the team, and we tend to forget to dismiss that. But I'd say he was a flop because of the lack of goals and consistency, but I'll always have a soft spot. I mean, he always worked hard. Like, I can't take that away from him. But ultimately, when you spend 50 million, and like 50 million 4 years ago is a lot. Just like the 35 million that you spent on Xhaka five seasons ago, that's a lot back then. So you have to think, like, if you just inflate the price a little bit, maybe it's closer to like 70 now in like today's market. That is a lot of money. And so when you're looking for somebody to come in, and I'm not quite sure that like I want to put it on like the whole like, okay, well, we wanted to get somebody better than Giroud, but just on a standalone, if you spent in today's market, 70, 75 million on a striker. If this is what you got from it, I think you'd just be ultimately disappointed. So regardless to how hard he worked, he just never really fit in. You could just tell, like, it was in that in-between period where the club really didn't have a transfer plan. It was just buy players and see if it could work, and just kind of square pegs in round holes. And we never played a two-striker system to get Lacazette and Aubameyang playing together, and we lacked wingers. So yeah, he's up there for maybe like one of the worst signings, but it's not necessarily because I think Lacazette was crap. I just don't really understand what the plan was behind it. The Onyx Lens says, good riddance. I'm sorry. I've never seen a striker trip or stumble over himself so much. A top-rated player shouldn't miss his shots the way he did. He needs glasses. No, seriously. Tony says, I'm not taking Laka slander. He has been our best player at some time. Sick Galazos. Love me a near post top bins. Was a part of our worst team building era and probably won't get his props. Overall meh. That's basically what it is. I mean, the squad building over the last 5 years has been terrible. And so, you have players like this that came to Arsenal, probably thought, I'm making my big move. It's a Champions League level team. I'm going to be playing with like Ozil and these guys. And it just hasn't really worked out like that. And so you can look at probably most of the signings that we've made in the last 5 years and look at it kind of sideways, like, did that really work out? Xhaka, Lacazette, Mustafi, Pepe, the new contract for Ozil. You could probably add that in there. Like, there's just some, where you're looking at it like, did that really make sense? Swapping Alexis for Mkhitaryan, that's really up there for me as one of the worst, So, yeah, he just kind of is in that same bin with the rest of it. But I don't think Lacazette was like a crap player, if that makes sense. Lucas says signing Laka then was like Osimhen now. Exactly. Like, that's the type of money that you were putting down. Saida says, I've never understood why Arsenal fans have rated Laka's time as being good. I think there's a difference between, like, do you rate it's about rating the time here versus rating the player. Because I don't actually think Lacazette is crap. Like, he's going to go back to France and people will be, well, look at him. He's banging in goals now. Like, I'm pretty sure he'll be fine. But I just think, like, there's a group of players that are kind of synonymous with the decline of Arsenal over the last 5 years. He's a big part of that. And the pressure, the lack of squad building, the lack of planning from Arsenal, like, we've just kind of been in a holding pattern for like 5 seasons or so. And these type of signings, their time, I don't think you can rate his time as like being good, but I don't think I rate Lacazette as a bad footballer. Just like I don't actually think Xhaka is a bad footballer, or I don't actually think that Pepe is a bad footballer. I think it's poor squad building and poor recruitment. You know what I mean? And that's why players go away and they look fine. It's because they just didn't fit into what we were doing. And we don't even know what would have fit because we didn't have a plan. If we did, it was a really bad plan. Shamoy says he inherited the name Laka Threat. That says enough. We paid 50 plus million for him, and his best season was 14 goals and 4 this season. BX Gunner says he's a certified midfielder, not a striker. He should have switched positions to further his career. Craze says, good evening. And I would say Laka is a flop considering he cost 50 million, no CL, and he was never consistently clinical. Wasn't terrible, though. Newman says he's like Nicola Pepe with more games, a French league, one player, not Prem quality. Blaze says, Jess, I will never forget when Lacazette missed the chance to score against Burnley at the Emirates and Wolves away. I wish Lacazette good luck at Lyon, but unfortunately it didn't work out for him at Arsenal. AV says, I think recency bias is sadly determining a lot of fans' opinions on Laka. He was a good servant to the club, but was disappointing. Yeah, I mean, good servant. I mean, he always worked hard, but I almost feel like we kind of forget that that's a bare minimum requirement. to work hard. So like I can give him credit for that. But ultimately what his job was to score goals, and he failed at that. There's some good moments. He had some decent moments, but in terms of consistency, it just wasn't there. So, and for the amount that we paid for him, like I'm not sure it's recency bias. I think just overall, you can't just give players like he's cost 50 million. El Neni, you can give him he always worked hard, you know, he always was a good hard worker. Lacazette, like that's a bare minimum requirement, really. So when we're really picking through it, he worked hard, but that's a bare minimum. When it came down to scoring goals, I remember more missed chances than ones that he actually put away. But he had some moments, so I don't know. Yo-Yo says Laka, like a lot of the squad, are symptoms, not causes of this poor club. Meh. Let's see. Oh, this is a funny one. So Harry says Jesus is a younger Laka. Laka had last 5 years at Arsenal, 54 goals, with 54.18 XG. Jesus last 6 years at City, 68 goals with 76.05 XG. Are those also including all his goals in the Champions League as well and every other competition? Because he has almost like 100 goals for City. So no. Like I get what people are trying to do, and with the whole Gabriel Jesus, and I think I'll pull up the tweet now, because I just want, like, it's hard to explain the whole Gabriel Jesus thing, because I do feel like people are trying to convince others that he's not a good player, which is fundamentally untrue. And just like an over exaggeration because you're not getting who you want. But basically, SV Carbaholic, I think, said it right. A lot of people in their mind wanted a target man, so they're doing their best to discredit Gabriel Jesus. To be honest, some of his goal scoring returns at City could have been better, but there's no way you can watch him via eye test and deduce that he's not good. They're literally just lying. And that's how I kind of feel about the whole Gabriel Jesus thing, and the idea that he's some sort of Nketiah Lacazette clone. You can't be crap and play for City. And you may want a different type of striker, but you guys are calling for Osimhen. He's never scored more than 15 goals a season. So he's not particularly prolific either. So, and you would have to pay maybe 20 to 30 million more on Osimhen. So the idea that Gabriel Jesus is some sort of bum, because that's not who you want. He's infinitely, because could Lacazette ever play for Manchester City? I think the answer is a flat out no. Could Eddie Nketiah ever play for City at this point? No. And it's wild to me how people are trying to make Gabriel Jesus look like a dead player and compare him to the likes of Lacazette and Nketiah. It's crazy. Like, it just is crazy to me. Lynn says Laka has been good with the young players at Arsenal, and what is he going to do at Lyon? I can't see him starting. I mean, they have that one guy, Moussa Diaby or Moussa Dembele, and so he's there, and so I don't know, maybe they'll share minutes. To be honest, don't really care what he does at Lyon. Once a player leaves Arsenal, I pretty much don't care anymore. I know that's bad, but I don't. Lacazette has been good with the young players, but the softy factory thing, I'm kind of done with it. I want more talent in the squad, so there you go. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the Lacazette thing. Get in there and, get onto that community poll. Blaze says, just do you think Arsenal buy Aubameyang in January? Lack confidence and injuries are reason that Lacazette stopped it to progress at Arsenal. Just do you think Arsenal buy Aubameyang in January? You mean this January? Well, the lack of confidence and injuries, I don't really know what it is with Lacazette. I think I saw a lack of confidence, and that injury to his ankle. He never recovered physically from it. So yeah, like that's what I kind of think it is. I don't want to go any further than that because it's more just speculation. Like, you know what I mean? It could be any number of things, but that's what it felt like to me. Do we buy our Aubameyang in January? Like, I don't. Can you clarify that for me? Is it this January or the January that we bought him? Because I want to answer that question. But yeah, I bye, Lacazette. There's 215 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's move on. So, who watched Scotland play the Ukraine yesterday? The game ended 3-1, and the Ukraine were so good. And you got to be happy for them with everything that's happening, in their country at the moment, and them not being able to play together for like 6 months or so. That was a really, really good passion-filled performance by the Ukraine. And so happy to see them move on to like the next step of qualifying for the World Cup. I think the interesting thing is that like Aaron Hickey was playing and so was Zinchenko. Those are two players that we've been linked to. And so I was interested to see how they looked during that game. It was funny because the announcers during the game were saying that Aaron Hickey was close to signing for Brentford. And, he's also linked to Arsenal, but I don't think he wants to. This is what the announcer said. I'm not sure that he just wants to go and sit on somebody's bench. Is interesting because I'm like, I don't think Brentford are actually leading the race for Hickey. I think it's us. And I think there's enough information out there to show that. It's weird. When we're linked to players, they act like we don't exist. So odd. But I think Aaron Hickey, like in that game, because I like watching players play full matches because you can kind of see what they're like. But just a caveat for Aaron Hickey, like he was playing on the right-hand side, so I want to keep that into perspective, but also we would, I think, be purchasing him because he can play on both sides. But I think Clive said it from the Arsenal Vision. He said it pretty clearly that Aaron Hickey still looks like a boy and Zinchenko plays more like a man. That makes a lot of sense because there might be 5 or 6 years in between them in terms of age. But Zinchenko was also playing midfield, which we had some people in the chat box a couple of days ago trying to convince me that he couldn't play midfield. I would take Zinchenko in a second for our left-sided midfield. He's an 8. Most players that play for City are 8s, so and whether or not you play in that position, it just depends on who's in front of you. So Zinchenko, I thought. So we'll start off with Aaron Hickey first. He had a very rough first half. I have to be honest. I don't think he looked that good. And the second half, he was a lot better, but also the game was kind of gone by then as well. The system that Scotland were playing it just didn't bear any fruit. And so seeing him as a wing back on the right-hand side, I think did impact his performance. But my fear with him is that he will be somewhat of another project. And although I do like his ambidextry and the fact that he's been playing significant minutes in Serie A, he does still look kind of like a boy. So there you go. But I do still think that he's a quality player. I just am not sure that we need to get another kid that is that was going to be. He got bullied by the number 9 on that corner. Or not, was it a corner that they scored off of? Maybe, or the cross. And he just got bullied. And I just thought, do we need more of that? Do we need more players that are going to get bullied? We already have Tavares, and yeah, it wasn't great, but at the same time, I do understand that was a difficult. If you looked at any of those Scottish players, you'd probably think they were no good, and we do know some of them really are. So I want to keep that in perspective. But equally, if I'm willing to make have an opinion about Zinchenko in midfield based on that performance, I also want to be honest about Hickey and say that I don't think he looked great. So even though I want to make caveats for him, it wasn't a great performance. Now, Zinchenko, on the other hand, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was very much like everything that we're kind of missing in terms of that left central midfielder. He had that. What Zinchenko has in he has such good technical ability. Like on the ball, he walks straight into our team. And this is the thing about any Manchester City player. And I know some people are very like, I don't want to take Manchester City's leftovers. But Manchester City's leftovers walk into our team and start and make us better. They just do. And so with somebody like Zinchenko, who like can play left back and can also play left central midfielder and will give us more mobility and technical ability on that side. He's better than Granit Xhaka. He's an upgrade on Granit Xhaka. And so I could see a midfield of like Zinchenko, Tielemans, Thomas Partey, Zinchenko, Odegaard, Thomas Partey, like something like that. And we would have eights in our team where we've tried to put like ESR in there and he's just been a little bit too lightweight. I think somebody like Zinchenko could do that job and he's left-footed. So, and Arteta really likes that. So I can see maybe where that link really makes sense. Let me go back to my other bookmarks on this because there was somewhat of like a report on it. Or is it there? I hate when I feel like I bookmarked something and then it's not there. Maybe I didn't. Where is it? Sorry, you guys. I'm getting frustrated with myself. Oh, here it is. Okay, so this is coming from El Desmarque, which is a Spanish publication, I think. And basically, they're saying that Marc Cucurella is one step away from becoming a Manchester City player, paving the way for Zinchenko to join Arsenal. So, I do think that that's something that could happen. I'm not sure if it will. I mean, the Manchester City journalist that originally broke the news that we were interested in Zinchenko was basically saying that, like, it'll be interesting to see if a bid actually comes in. So I think it'll kind of depend on who leaves or whatever. But, Manchester City aren't particularly, they don't really want him to go, which makes sense because the more quality players Pep has to his disposal, the better, which is kind of similar to Gabriel Jesus. But, they won't stand in his way if he wants to go either. And he wants more playing time and he wants guarantees. And I'm not sure that he'll get that when they have, the likes of Kyle Walker and they have João Cancelo. And then if they bring in Cucurella, I don't really know where a lot of that playing time is going to come in for him. So, I mean, I did like him. I did think he looked really good. You have to take the opposition into account with this as well. Like, Scotland weren't very good, but I think in terms of like, can Zinchenko play midfield? Does he have good technical quality? You could see that there. And you could also see it when he played for City. So I don't know why people were so like, no, I would keep Xhaka. I just don't think he can play in the midfield. We are starved. Our midfield is weak, so I would take him. I would. Orpheus Jones says Zinchenko, fantastic. Hickey, terrible. He's so cumbersome. Looks like a center back playing fullback. Keenan says, I watched the game. I wonder if the war and all the emotions around it impacted the performance of the players. FTL says, Zinchenko was a beast last night. Christopher says, Zinchenko is good. We should go for him. Kibui says, I watched the game. I told you about Roman Yaremchuk. He is solid, would be a good buy. You did say that. You did say that. So fair play to you. BX Gunner says Zinchenko in midfield wasn't bad last night. That says Brentford's probably Hickey's level. If that's how Hickey actually is, I am worried about us just having another Tavares on our hands, somebody that is not quite up to the level. And so, I mean, wouldn't you rather just get Zinchenko and let him play left central midfield? And then if something were to happen to Tierney, then play him there? I mean, I feel like that might be a better use of funds because to get Aaron Hickey, it's going to cost you like 25 million. What would it take to bring in Zinchenko? I'm not sure. Zach 10 asked a question: would Zinchenko be a squad player at Arsenal, and why would you swap a squad place at City, a squad space at Arsenal without UCL? How would he be a squad player? Like, again, like that. I remember people were saying like Gabriel Jesus would come in and be some sort of backup. These players walk straight into our first team and start games. Like Zinchenko could play. And here's the thing: I think all of our players, including like the likes of Odegaard, need competition for their place. I don't really like the idea that people are just like, these are the starters and there's nobody even there knocking on the door. If you had Odegaard, Zinchenko, and Tielemans as your 8 options, you could just swap them around, and whoever doesn't get in is whoever doesn't get in. I'm not particularly worried about saving people's spots. I think that we need people to have to work for them. And so I don't think Zinchenko walks in and becomes a squad player. I think he starts either at left back or left-sided central midfield. Our midfield options are not that good. He instantly becomes a starter. Udot says, Zinchenko is a much better ball carrier than I thought. Perfect Xhaka replacement, but neither him or Tielemans offer party backup. So do you really think we might get both and trust El Neni? I think the signing of El Neni was a clear indication that we're going to go with Sambi and El Neni as the backups to Thomas Partey, and will improve the 8s. Whether or not we get 2 is really, is a question, but I just don't understand why we would go into a window and just bring in 3 players and then just say that's it, because we've seen, like, even with just only playing for the Premier League, we looked very thin in all of our positions. Like, they had no other options. We were always an injury away from catastrophe. So it's kind of like, I would prefer them to bring in, if you're not going to improve upon Thomas Partey's position and you're just going to go with Sambi and El Neni, I would prefer them to bring in more. They still need to bring in more than one midfielder. And he ticks a lot of boxes in terms of Premier League proven, won things before, still young enough to be good in the short term and the long term, improves the technical quality in midfield, and gives us another option at left back. It just makes sense to me in terms of on paper it does. But I don't trust that they'll do it, but they should, because Arsenal cannot be out here really thinking, you know what, one midfielder and one striker is cool. Like, that's going to get us through. It's not. Like, it's just not. S says, I told you before Zinchenko was even linked to us, he'd walk into our midfield. Yeah, for sure he does. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. There's 257 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Gilfie says Zinchenko could start over Xhaka. Arsenal cannot go down the Tavares and Lokonga route if they are seriously thinking about competing. Yeah, seeing Hickey did kind of make me like, is he good enough? Like, do we want another project? Do we need more projects? I mean, our entire team is a project. We have, Martinelli, ESR, like those 2 players in itself, to me, they need somebody experienced in front of them. You have Odegaard, who in some games is very good, in other games goes missing. It would just be nice to actually bring in players that put pressure on the starters and could start for us and already have the quality. We don't have to worry about it. Hickey would be another punt, in my opinion, from what I saw last night. Again, maybe I'm overrating what Zinchenko did and over-indexing what Hickey did based on the scenario of, what was on the line and, the emotions of the competition and all that kind of stuff. But just taking it on face value, Hickey is another project. Zach Tan says, would you be very happy with Zinchenko and Tielemans, but no Decore or Bissouma? Would I be happy with that? No, like, it would be a different type of happy. Like, I think I'd be like, yes, okay, left back is secure. The 8s are secure. But I would still be like, we didn't get the 6 that we desperately need. But I've kind of come through, like, I've kind of gotten to the point now where in my mind, I just know Arsenal are not going to address central defensive midfield. They're just not going to do it. Like, they re-signed El Neni and they already have Sambi. I don't think they're going to do it, even though we've been linked to some players. So if that's what I ended up getting, or all of us ended up getting, Zinchenko and Tielemans, I think I would be some version of happy, even though in the back of my mind, I'm like, but could we have gotten something else? So yeah. Matt says Zinchenko definitely starts in our mid now, but if we get him and Yuri, maybe not, but he will be 3 times his wages at Arsenal, so he'd of course be keen. Yeah, those wages are not meant to sit there and just be sitting in a bank account. We need to spend those wages on quality players. And again, like, I know it's not exciting to get Manchester City's leftovers, but they're so much better than the players that we have. You know what I mean? So I would take them. I would. And if it took, increasing the wages and stuff like that, I think it's worth it instead of just going the young project with promise route every single time. We have enough of that. We have so many players like that. Let's see. Typically Arsenal fan says we have the same weak midfield like we had last season. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any sort of hurry to like fix the midfield and make sure that you know, it's better. Lano says Zinchenko is only on 20 grand per week at City. Sign him up. I mean, give him the wages, and I would do that instead of, just sticking with the status quo. We know Tierney's going to get injured. And what I will say is that as much I love Tierney to death, I do, but we can't rely upon him. And the best thing that could have happened for Arsenal is probably Scotland not making it into the World Cup. Sorry, any Scottish people that are here. I know that that's probably not what you want to hear from me. But from an Arsenal perspective, having him sitting on his ass for 5 weeks instead of going out there and playing at 100% for Scotland, for me, is a good thing. But we still need to boost that position a little bit more. Orpheus Jones says, what are we saying? Zinchenko, Tielemans, Richarlison, Jesus for 160 million. If that's the window that we end up with, I mean, I wouldn't be devastated. I really wouldn't. All those players make us better, much better. All of them walk straight into our first team. Whoever's starting there, they go, and they get that spot, so I think that's a decent window for Arsenal. Pap says, Jess, the project players are what's making the difference. All the experienced players was a flop at Arsenal. Xhaka, Partey, Elneny, Tierney, Cedric. I will take young. Here's the thing, though. Even though the young players are what's making the project go, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't bring in experienced players to play in front of them. If we had better experienced players, that would always help us out. So replacing the likes of Lacazette and Xhaka and Elneny with better players that are more experienced. And, I think that that's a good thing. So this is not me saying I don't want any more project players. I'm just saying we have enough of those. We don't need more. And just because we're in Europa League doesn't mean we have to continue to buy players that need 3 or 4 seasons to actually become what we think they're going to be. You can buy quality players for a Europa League side that are already more experienced. You just have to pay them. You just have to be willing to pay the fee. And Arsenal decided that it was cool not to really push for Champions League. So I don't really want to hear anything about not having the money for it. No more project players. Everybody that we bring in needs to be 26, 25, 26 to 20, 25 to 26 years old, better than what we have. That has to be the option. Lynn says, I think because the club Zinchenko would have come from, his mentality would be much stronger than Tielemans, I think. See, my thing is, like, I don't want either or Tielemans or Zinchenko. I think we need both, because on the days that Odegaard, maybe comes back from international duty or he's not at 100%, you want to be able to bring somebody else on or start somebody that doesn't make our levels drop. And so if you have, again, here's the thing is, if you spend 25 million on Tielemans and 55 million on Gabriel Jesus, that's 75? Oh, let me do the math. You guys, I can't do math. That's 80 million pounds. You have almost 80 million more to spend. So you got to bring in more players. So why not bring in another winger and bring in and like somebody like Zinchenko. Um, Nobody ever died because you had too much quality in your team. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm not thinking either or. I'm thinking bring in both Tielemans and Zinchenko. So on the days that Odegaard's not feeling it or he gets injured, we don't see the levels drop off like we do when Xhaka comes in. Like not either or. Not either or. The way that we stock up our back line, let's stock up the midfield and the striker positions. You see what I'm saying? We spend a lot of time making sure we have all these center backs. Let's do that the same with midfield. Um, you know? So yeah. Um, yeah. So yeah, there's almost 300 of you guys in here. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. Loved watching a game where two people that we're linked with are playing against each other. Very happy for the Ukraine. Would take Zinchenko. I'm looking at Hickey like, nah, maybe not. But there you go. Tielemans. Let's talk about him for a second. There's been some updates on this deal, and this is coming from a Belgian publication that talks have already begun for the transfer of Yuri Tielemans from Leicester City to Arsenal. I also just saw that Zach 10 put this in the chat that the Mirror are saying that Arsenal are confident of sealing a $25 million deal for Tielemans. That would be massive because that is like pennies for this player. And I know we have battled and went back and forth and debated about this for weeks. Is he any good? Whatever. He has had a bad season. I hear all of that, but 25 million pounds for a player of this quality is a steal. And then you can still go out and get somebody like Zinchenko. So I really do. I like this deal. I think this deal is smart. We've obviously been talking about him for staying. What was I thinking? Like I saw somebody saying something and I was like kind of reading it while I was talking. So we've been working on this for a while. Obviously, we've been talking to his agent since January. So if this could come to fruition, I do think it's good because again, you bring in Gabriel Jesus for 55 million, you bring in Tielemans for 25, and then you're talking about 80, and you still have half of your money, to continue to spend. And we need at least 4 players to come in, at least. So yeah, I think it's fine. Like I like this player. Of course, people will, try to clown you about the funny thing about Tielemans is if he was going anywhere else, people would be saying how great he is. But because he would be potentially going to Arsenal, he must be crap. This player is not crap, ladies and gentlemen. And this is coming from somebody who was looking at him the first time we were linked with him, like, not sure, but recency bias, playing in a bad team, having a bad season, that's not who you are. That's a bad form. And so, yeah, the one thing I will say about him is he needs to get in the gym. I do agree with some of you guys. He needs to firm up. He needs to get in the gym, maybe put away the McDonald's, whatever, because that guy, like, he doesn't look like he's the fittest. So, but I do like this deal. I do like this deal. Yo-Yo says, I suspect Tielemans will be fighting for the Odie spot. I can see him in a 3 with Party, and I can't see him in a 3 with Party and the Norwegian. What do you guys think about that? Do you think Tielemans is coming in to provide some sort of competition for Odegaard? Because it is true that mostly for Leicester, he's played primarily on the right-hand side. And, Arteta's very strict about, who plays on what side. Even though Odegaard plays on the right-hand side, the left side usually has a left footer in every position. So I wonder if he would be coming in on that right-hand side. Cool. I don't really care. I think Odegaard does need pressure on his position so he doesn't get like comfortable. So if that were true, then that's fine. But then also Xhaka being your starting left 8, he needs some, competition for his position at Arsenal. He's been here for 5 years and has never had any sort of competition for his spot. And so I'm not trying to see Arsenal go into next season with Xhaka as the starter. If that is how we're going into next season, we failed. So if you brought in Tielemans and Zinchenko were competition for Xhaka and Odegaard, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. You know, Zach 10 says I'd be very happy with both Zinchenko and Tielemans and not just one. If we get both, would you let Xhaka go if he pushed to go? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm always wanting us to move on from him. But yeah, if he stayed, it'd be fine. I just think, he can't be the number one. He just can't. And Bulo says Tielemans is the Belgian Xhaka. He's 100% not. He's 100% not. I mean, in what way? If you're talking about defensively, then maybe, but again, back to that tweet where what did he say? That because we don't really want this player, we've decided that he's crap, and then we start comparing him to our players that are not very good. Saying Gabriel Jesus is similar to Xhaka or is similar to Lacazette or on the same level as Lacazette, and Tielemans and Xhaka are somehow on the same level, you're either underrating those players or overrating our players. I don't know. Those players are not very good. Lacazette and Xhaka are not. Let's see. Lynn says here is one problem. Why would Brendan Rodgers let this player go for 25 million when we wanted Madison and they wanted 75 million? So with Madison last summer, they didn't want to sell him. They didn't want to sell him. And so I get that they were going to always jack the price up. And we also had money. We were out there in the streets talking about how much money we had. And Tielemans is different because he's ran his contract down. And this is a player that they had, a season ago, probably could have went for 50, 60 million. So now that they're in a position that Manchester City are not, they have to sell their players. They can't allow them to go for free. So it's not so much that I think Brendan Rodgers is willing to let Tielemans go for this amount of money. The where his contract is at, they can't really ask for more than that. So I think they're in a position where teams don't want to be, where their players are within 1 year of their contract and they can't afford to let them go for free. So they're at kind of like the mercy of that player and in the buying clubs. With Madison, last summer, they didn't want to sell. And so it was, and I don't think, let's see how much time, I think Madison has time left on his contract so they could ask for that. So I think the two situations are really different. And it's not really so much about what Brendan Rodgers wants. It's more about the fact that Yuri Tielemans has played this perfectly. He drove down his price, by letting his contract run. And so now he has more power than the club does. Sean says Madison has more time remaining on his contract and Tielemans is a better player than Madison is. Ghost, I'm just going to say Ghost. Tielemans' contract is about to expire. Madison had time left, hence whose price. So yeah, it's basically more of that than is Brendan Rodgers more willing to let Tielemans go because somehow he's not a better player? I think Madison and Tielemans are both they're quality players for years. I looked at these players and I'm like, how does Leicester have a better midfield than us? Because for a while they did. And in some ways they still do, but Tielemans drove his contract down and drove the price down. So there you go. So yeah. Menino says Bissouma should be demanded to Arsenal. It's obvious he would improve us significantly. It is. I mean, at the price and the quality of the player, he's another one that has 1 year left on his deal. So similarly, I'm sure Brighton would not be happy to be selling Bissouma for 30 million or so, when a season ago they probably could have gotten 50 for him. But he ran his contract down, and so now he can get out for about 30 million. The thing about Bissouma and players like of Bissouma's quality and the way that he plays the central defensive midfielder position, I'm not sure that that's what Arteta wants in his team. I think he's always going to opt for more ball playing technical players in the base of his midfield than destroyers. So I've yet to see him go after a destroyer type midfielder. And the links to Neves and Tielemans, I think, speak to that. Fabian Ruiz, none of them are particularly, that old school type of central defensive midfielder. So there you go. Moving on. Gabriel Jesus. I just love him, like he's going to be my next Thomas Partey where I just defend him until I can't defend him anymore. Like there's just some players that you just love so much. And he's definitely one of them for me. He's been speaking about his future, and his agent already kind of said that, he would decide his future right after the international break, which is basically at the beginning of the transfer window. So if I had to put a money on who I think our first signing is, I think it's him. Like, I think it's going to be him. And he did score a goal yesterday for Brazil. And here it is.
Né, da saída de bola do Gabriel, maestro Gabriel Jesus, que lindo lance, vai fazer golaço!
So yeah, he scored a goal, and he spoke about his future. He said he'll go to the project that is best for his career, and that kind of stuff. And so this looks like something that could get done, and I just have this feeling that it's gonna be him. And he said, I'm looking for the best option for my career. I really like this player. I've always, even before, he was linked to us, I said I really wanted him at the club. I think that being in the shadow of Aguero can be a very not so fun place to be. And since he's been there, I do think that he's kind of suffered from that. Does that mean that, if Aguero wasn't there, he would be, scoring 20 to 30 goals a season? I don't think so, but I just think he needs to be somewhere where he can be the man. And so that's what he'd be at Arsenal. That's what he's looking for. And you never know, when a player gets out of the shadow of somebody else, sometimes they will shine a little bit more. So yeah, that's kind of what I think. And no, I'm not saying that he's like Aguero. I'm just saying that being in the shadow of a player like that can really be bad for the psyche of a young player. Remember, he's been there since he was like 21 years old. So yeah, I really like that player. And probably showing you guys that will get the video demonetized, but I'll take it out later and it'll be fine. I just wanted to show it to you guys. That's fine. Sean says, and Arteta doesn't use a destroyer midfielder the same way Bielsa never does. Not hard to see the parallels. It's not a mirrored system, but conceptually very similar. And so the calls for the likes of like Bissouma, I don't think that'll ever come to fruition, not because maybe Arteta doesn't think the player is good. It's just, it doesn't fit with how he wants to play. And so, it's just one of those. And like, even if you look at that Czech Decore player that we've been linked to, that's also linked to Crystal Palace, his progressive passing and his technical ability on the ball is more similar to Thomas Partey. So I can see us maybe looking at somebody like him, but I don't think we'll ever be in the market for an Ndidi or Bissouma as long as Arteta's the manager. So yeah. BX Gunner says he's better. He's Brazilian. She Knows Football says Arsenal will be awesome if they got 3 players, Jesus, Osimhen, and Gnabry, and then address the midfield. Well, if you get Jesus, Osimhen, and Gnabry, then you won't have money to address the midfield. And I think that that's the issue, is that you'll probably only be able to get 2 attackers. And I don't think the ones coming in will be Osimhen or Gnabry. It'll be Jesus and someone else on the wing. So there you go. Unknown user. I do stream on Twitch. This is also available on Twitch as well. I just never really pay attention to it, but I do stream on Twitch as well, just not primarily and only on Twitch. Nikomo says, Jesus, Tielemans, Zinchenko, Saliba, goal-scoring winger, Gnabry, cough. That's the window I'm about. Yeah, I mean, if it ends up being like Jesus, Tielemans, Zinchenko, Saliba coming back in, and then we bring in a goal-scoring winger, no matter who it is, I think I'm okay with that window. And I like players that have played in the league before. I know that it's not the only important thing. Like with Gnabry, I wouldn't care whether he played in the Premier League. He has, but you know what I mean? It's not really that big of a deal to me. But for just immediacy and making sure that we hit the ground running, I do think it's good, to have players that have played in the league before. Josh exclamation point says, did you hear that Gakpo has been offered? Gakpo has been offered to us. Do you think Gakpo is the winger? I like Gakpo a lot. I really do. And I think he'll end up being a project. And if there was, he'll end up being a project because of the Eredivisie and feeling like players that come from that league need a lot of time to adapt, and either they do or they don't. But I really do like that player, and I think that's the kind of player that we need. When you look at Gakpo, he's somebody that's literally what he is. He's a goal-scoring winger, and he has some physicality and some height and speed to him. So, yeah, kind of similar to like a Danjuma type, like those types of players I do really like. Richarlison kind of fits in that category as well. But Gakpo is more slick and technical, where Richarlison is just more of a bully. So it just depends on what your preference is. But I do love Gakpo. I think he's like the best player in the Eredivisie. And if he can translate that game to the Premier League, he'd be very, very good. But, I would be very worried about wanting to start him right away, and then maybe him not hitting the ground running like we want him to, and then us not having the goals that we need. So that's the only thing that would stop me from wanting him, even though I love the player. Let's see. Ghost 3D says, love Gakpo. He can play across the front three anywhere, but he is project youth. He is project youth. So, but here's the thing, is if I had to choose project youth Hickey or project youth Gakpo, I'd pick project youth Gakpo, and just bring in Zinchenko. Looking at Hickey, I feel like he's more of a risk than Gakpo for some reason, but it may just be that one game that I saw where I was like, ooh. Orpheus Jones says, I think I'd go for Richarlison over Gnabry. He's more of an Arteta player. His aerial threat would be a weapon from the left wing coming onto the Saka, Odegaard in swingers. That's very true that Richarlison is a aerial threat and somewhat of like a bully, and we don't really have that. Gnabry's just a very good player. So I would take him anyway. But I hear the shouts on Richarlison as well. Saida says, how do you think we can address our PNP issues in midfield, especially because, like you said, Arteta prefers the likes of Ruiz, Neves instead of Bissouma? I think if you're going to opt to be have less power and pace in your midfield, you need to have such good technical quality that it doesn't matter. I think keeping the ball, strangling the opposition with possession, and just being able to get past that first line of the press, I think is really important. So before, when we were playing against PNP teams or teams that were more aggressive, we were fine, especially when we had like Tomiyasu available, because his athleticism really helped us. But Thomas Partey's ability to evade the first line of pressing really helped us against teams in midfield that would try to bully us. And he was kind of like a one-man midfield. When he was doing that, we were fine. Once you took him out and you didn't have a player that could do something in the first phase and then create a second phase with their technical quality, we suffered. So with Xhaka and El Neni, they're kind of like, get it, pass it, get it, pass it, get it, pass it. With Thomas Partey, it was get it, evade pressure, then pass it, and we were gone. So I think if you have more than one player in your midfield that can do that, you're in a good spot. And then because Odegaard really suffers because he's that player that you can find in that second phase once you avoided that press, because he'll sit in between the lines of their midfield and their defense. He really suffers when you can't do that. So when our midfielders are being pressed and they can't find him, he goes ghost within a game. So I do think that, with somebody else in midfield that can get it, avoid the pressure, beat the press, and find that next line, I think that will help us a lot to avoid getting stomped out by the PNP teams. And if you've watched any of Tielemans, he can do that. He can get the ball and have some sort of creativity on his own. Besides just the patterns of play that are locked in their heads. El Neni and Xhaka just kind of follow the plan. And if they don't see that option open, they just pass backwards, where if Thomas Partey gets it, he can body feint or pass it sideways or find, a pass out, clip ball out wide. We need players that have a higher technical quality to deal with the power and pace. That's pretty much what City do. City just have really technical players, and then once they beat the press a couple of times, you stop trying to beat them off the ball because you can't do it. So that's pretty much the only thing that you can do. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the news for today. I wanted to keep this one a little bit shorter because I know the other ones had gotten kind of long. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's about 320 of you guys in here. So like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, She Knows Football. I really appreciate you for all of your super chats and all of your great comments. Let's see. Yo-Yo says it best. Press-resistant central midfielders are necessary, and Thomas Partey is pretty much press-resistant. Tielemans is pretty much press-resistant, and if you got somebody like Zinchenko, he probably is as well, and that makes up for, maybe somebody like Odegaard, who is kind of press-resistant but a little bit meek as well. So, yeah, I think this was a good show, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Okay, I hear what you're saying, Sean, about Hickey. I will keep that in mind as well. Like, that's what I said. I may be over-indexing that performance a little bit. Because when I saw him play for Bologna, I thought he was very good, but he was on the right-hand side, and I get that Scotland didn't play well, so fair enough. I take that on. But like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.